Good morning, my name is Chris Treasure. I'm speaking to you from the Capetown International Convention Centre at the IT Web Security Summit 2024 in Cape Town. And with me in our studio, I've got Professor Victoria Baines. You're the Professor of IT at Gresham College in the UK. Thank you for being here, Victoria.
Hi Chris, thanks for having me.
So really this is an opportunity for us, Victoria, to explain to viewers what you presented on the topic that you discussed, the implications of cyber warfare and state-sponsored cyber attacks for cyber security. Gosh, it sounds quite complicated. Can you break it down for us a little bit?
It sounds pretty scary as well, right? But I, to be honest with you, I think that the audience here in person and also the viewers at home, they will sense that more and more the decisions that they make in terms of how they deploy their cybersecurity, where they buy their cybersecurity, and where they even procure their day-to-day IT for their business operations is a geopolitical issue. And we see, sanctions being issued against nation states for state-sponsored, cyber criminal activity.
Yes.
And really, what I wanted to do was just remind people, but also show them some information that they might not have had access to before, about how this is all linked. That when, for instance, President Biden in the US says that he's going to ban TikTok, why is that exactly? Is it just a flexing of, sovereign national muscle in the trade and tech wars, or are there cybersecurity reasons to this? And likewise, when China bans WhatsApp and ChatGPT, is that actually a cybersecurity issue, or is it just talking big, in diplomatic circles? And I think now more than ever we're seeing that link between what people down in incident response and CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, are doing is really linked to all of those big political decisions in international relations, international law, economic policy. One of the examples that I always like to use that I did talk about this morning is looking at North Korea. That if you pay a ransom to North Korean criminals, that could be going into their national GDP pot. And of course we know that they spend a lot of their GDP on nuclear weapons. Right. So that idea that, to get yourself out of a fix when you're affected by ransomware, you pay the ransom and you're funding North Korean nuclear weapons, which is a little bit scary, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's very sobering to think that whatever you do from a cybersecurity point of view, whether you're an organization, a company, an individual, there are going to be implications, there are going to be consequences. And I think maybe that's the message coming through to the wider cybersecurity ecosystem and community, but also to those people who are not specialists in cybersecurity. There are things that are going to happen, and I think that's coming through quite strongly in this event.
I think it is, and you know what? I also recognise that people who work in cybersecurity, infosec, incident response, however you want to call it, they have enough to worry about. I don't want to freak them out about something additional, We all know that we've got a problem with burnout in cybersecurity and in incident response teams. I know we have another talk today about using AI in cybersecurity, and I'm really relieved that we're getting more automated tools that we can use to manage some of the grunt work of cybersecurity, so that some of those security operations analysts aren't having to scroll through millions and millions of red flags and incidents. That has an impact. And being on call 24/7, we know that for CISOs that has an impact. That there's always something in the news that their non-execs are going to ask them about, or there's millions of incidents that it could just be that one that we need to be worried about. So I don't mean to freak people out unnecessarily, but and I actually think that sometimes we realise a little bit later in the day how everything is connected.
Right.
Yes. And I think what we've seen in the last few years is governments, but particularly the US government, just talking tougher on tech than it used to, because there is this, we talk about the arms race in cybersecurity, there's an arms race in tech more generally, particularly in AI. You know, the biggest threat, as far as, you know, Eric Schmidt from Google is concerned, the biggest threat to the US is Chinese development of AI, because they're the other ones that are going to potentially steal a march on US dominance.
Right.
But if you're China, US dominance of tech, the popularity even of things like Facebook and Google and Microsoft's tools is a threat to national security. So what we don't always get is an appreciation of those different perspectives.
Yes.
I'm not saying that we need more empathy in diplomacy.
No.
You know, everybody has legitimate reasons for, you know, prioritising what they prioritise, treating something as a national security threat. But I think for people working in businesses and having to make decisions about where they get their tech from, where they get their cybersecurity tools from, it's helpful that for them to be aware that there's quite a bit to navigate.
Right.
That there's no such thing as a harm-free
Sort of
procurement decision,
sure.
you know.
I mean, it's interesting as well, the fact that you emphasize the connectivity. One thing that tends to happen perhaps in cybersecurity, and I don't know if you agree, is that there's always people tend to sort of focus more on the technology, you know, the solutions. What are you doing at all those touch points in the company to make sure that they're secure, data secure? Absolutely, these are fundamental, and it goes to what you're talking about as well. But we forget that these people at the end of that chain, you know, and it's people that you're addressing, and it's people that make decisions and user behavior and what you can control, what you can't control. At the end of the day, that is fundamental to whatever's going to happen from a cybersecurity point of view going forward.
That's absolutely right, and I know it's kind of an old adage to talk about really good cybersecurity being about people, process and technology, and
sure.
over the years we've always said, oh, but we forget the people bit. You know, that means that we have all reminded each other that we needed to be focused on social engineering and security awareness programs. Yes. Those are notoriously difficult to measure the impact. Whereas with a technical measure, you can put a control in place and say, well, we've done that, particularly when you've got to report to an information commissioner or a cybersecurity agency, and you know, when an incident happens, you have to be able to show that you've been compliant, that you've ticked all the boxes, that you did what was required to prevent that attack happening or to prevent people's data being leaked. That's all well and good. I totally appreciate that, you know, security awareness programs, it can be really difficult to be able to show that you have measured or affected behavioural change, that somehow people are safer. That said, we're seeing this very much in the field of AI, so where we have ChatGPT being used quite widely across all different types of organisations in different sectors. I am particularly coming into contact with people in the financial services sector who say that they've just banned people using ChatGPT in their organisations. Understandably, because you can say to your employees, oh, by all means use ChatGPT, but don't use it for personal data. Don't put proprietary information in it. Don't put company data in it. How on earth do you enforce that? Unless you're surveilling everybody's prompts that they're putting into these services, but you can see why people want to use them because they correct your spelling. You know, they're so much. You know, they've put copywriters out of jobs. You know, because they're so effective and efficient. So we have these policies, and I think when we look at people, process and technology, we also quite often forget about the process. We wait until legislation is introduced and we have to do something like data protection or network and information security. But this is a process, a policy consideration in organisations really, really quickly. You know, it came along, took us all by surprise. And now, you know, really large organisations who have great technical cybersecurity and maybe have great security awareness programs are now having to think, oh wow, our data is being leaked to a big company as training data for their tools because people can't resist the urge to put personal data and proprietary data into a large language model.
Gosh, I mean, where do you go from here? You know, and I know there were other facets of your presentation, like deepfake and political events, and how those that can sort of impact the whole scenario. But if there's one core message you would like maybe delegates at this event and those watching online, what would it be? What advice or point would you like to really raise with them?
Goodness, I don't want to give CISOs and security operations and InfoSec folks something else to worry about and another task to do.
Yes.
I think it's all too easy at the moment to just not keep abreast of current affairs, because there's so much going on, and we've had some real challenges over the last few years. We're all only just emerging from COVID, where we got alert fatigue, didn't we? You know, there was just every single minute there was something else to be worried about. And something else, we were frightened for our lives and our loved ones and our friends' lives. That said, technology is changing so quickly. There are so many political and social developments right now to keep track of, that it is helpful to start thinking about how developments in the outside world have an impact on your day-to-day cybersecurity operations. And whether you buy in threat intel for that, whether that is, you know, a procurement decision, because there are, you know, companies that will scan those environments for you, or whether you make it your own business to just be a bit more clued up about what's going on in different countries, you know, in terms of negotiations between the US and China about artificial intelligence. It's just helpful to just take yourself away from your desk and what you've got on your screens right in front of you and think, that next thing that someone's trying to get me to buy, what's the assurance on that? Particularly when we know that supply chain attacks are so dominant. Exactly. Think about things like SolarWinds, you know, and I don't want to, you know, name and shame, but where we've got security tools, you need to be able to assure yourselves and ask the right questions of suppliers about the provenance of those tools. Where are they coming from? That's because you need to be able to map that out yourself. So good audit and assurance, I think, is always going to be a good way to go.
Absolutely, and everybody must understand that cybersecurity is a reality in their lives, whether we like it or not.
Right.
And it's, what is it? Armed with enough information, you stand a better chance of getting through that and navigating the problems and the challenges. So I think we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much, Victoria, for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and summit, and hope to be in touch soon.
Thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thanks for watching, and come back again soon.